Welcome to CT Politics TV. I'm your host, Jimmy J. We have all the latest headlines affecting Connecticut. This first story is it's a little tougher one. The Middletown Press reported the death of State Representative Quentin Q. Williams of Middletown was being mourned around the state Thursday after the lawmaker was killed in a head-on wrong-way crash on Route 9 after leaving Governor Ned Lamont's inaugural ball. The 39-year-old Middletown native was viewed as a rising star at the state capitol. Having been sworn in for his third term on Wednesday, in addition to being a legislator, Williams was the Director of Advocacy and Policy for Excellence Community Schools, a charter school program in Stamford. Williams was particularly passionate about housing issues, in addition to serving his community where he was previously director of Middletown's downtown business district. He is survived by his wife, Carissa, who runs Small Victory Wellness Service in Middletown. State police, who did not immediately identify the drivers, said the crash occurred near exit 18 in the southbound lanes of Route 9. The vehicle driving northbound in the southbound lane collided head-on with the other car near the exit 18 ramp. The vehicle that was driving southbound became fully engulfed in flames on the left shoulder. The car traveling the wrong way on the highway came to rest in the Grass Center median. The driver of that vehicle was also pronounced dead at the scene, and their identity is being withheld until next of kin is notified, according to state police. State police said the crash remains under investigation, and the agency accident reconstruction unit was requested to help the investigation. State representative says Williams would want us to remember him modestly. Jeff Luxembourg of Manchester said Thursday that the loss of Williams was gut-wrenching. He'd known Williams for nearly 20 years. No statement from any friend, colleague, politician, or person will ever be able to capture in words his humility, his passion for justice, or his zeal for life. When Q laughed, his one-of-a-kind booming laugh, you felt joy deep in your soul, Luxembourg said. When he smiled, the room lit up. When he spoke, everyone listened. And when he worked as chair of this housing committee, or in any legislative capacity, you knew with a certainty that was both comforting and rare. The bedrock of his work was a passion and love for the people of Connecticut that was deeper and more authentic and more real than anyone. State legislators come and go, but there will never be another Q. I think he would want us to remember him modestly as Q, a friend and a humble public servant, a man of the people, a person who fought the toughest injustices of the world, and because of his Texas-sized heart and brilliant mind, won more than most, he added. Our thoughts and prayers go out to the family of Representative Williams. New Haven Register. With his second term just beginning, much of Governor Ned Lamont's agenda over the next 4 years remains to be seen, but one of his key proposals, a cut in the state income tax aimed at middle-class families, is already garnering bipartisan support. After many years of unfilled promises, now is the time to enact a meaningful middle-class tax cut, Lamont said in his State of the State address on Wednesday. That's a reduction in tax rates which the state can't afford and make your life more affordable. More details of Lamont's plan will come when he unveils his budget proposal in February to the democratically controlled General Assembly. But the governor has said he wants to propose a modest cut in state income tax for joint filers making up to $150,000 in yearly income and single filers making around $75,000 annually. Republicans want to see 1% point reduction in the state income tax, from a 5% rate to 4% for many taxpayers. The devil is in the details, House Minority Leader Vincent Candelora of North Branford told reporters after Lamont's address. We want a 1% reduction in tax for the middle class, and so that's something we're going to continue to push. Hopefully the governor's proposal will be in line with ours, Candelora said. Lamont's proposed income threshold, though subject to change, are in line with what the Republicans are seeking. Our latest proposal was $175,000 for married filers, so we're pretty close, he said. Speaking to reporters after the governor's speech, Senate Minority Leader Kevin Kelly of Stratford said there was agreement between Republicans and the governor on a broad range of issues like tax relief, affordability, fiscal caps, and workforce development, to the point that the Republican leader was keen to take credit for much of the Democrat governor's agenda. These are Republican ideas that we need to see happen, Kelly said. While the governor offered few specifics on his pitch for a middle-class tax cut, Kelly claimed that the root of that proposal lay in Republican calls for over $1 billion in tax cuts last year, double the amount eventually passed by Democrats. Going back further, Kelly noted that the cap on spending and borrowing that Lamont hailed in his speech were the product of bipartisan budget negotiations in 2018, when Republicans and Democrats were close to evenly split in the legislature. That was one of our cornerstones of that budget, to make sure those fiscal safeguards were in place. And look, they're working, and everyone agrees that we've got to keep them working, Kelly said. Lamont will likely face pressure as he has in the past to impose higher tax rates on the rich from members of his own party, such as Senate Minority Leader Martin Looney of New Haven, who has pushed for new taxes on states' highest income earners. The governor has opposed the plan, arguing that tax hikes on the wealthy will move them out of state. Looney said Wednesday afternoon that to support cutting tax rates for moderate and low-income families, state lawmakers and the governor had to be open to the possibility of generating some additional revenue at the highest end. In Danbury, efforts to create a fast track to New York City will move to the environmental review phase in 2023, with a federally funded study to assess the impacts of running commuter trains along the old Maybrook rail line to Brewster. The project is continuing to move forward, says Danbury's Director of Economic Development and Business Advocacy. The money has been allocated for the environmental study with the help of U.S. Rep. Jahana Hayes. We are waiting on the federal transit funds to be allocated in early 2023. The fast track concept, floated by former Mayor Mark Boughton during the final years of his administration, is to reopen the 14 miles of the Maybrook line to between Danbury and Southeast New York, where Manhattan-bound commuters would connect with Metro North's Harlem line to Grand Central Terminal. During talks between Boughton and Metro North President Kathy Rinaldi and State Department of Transportation Commissioner Joe Giolitti in 2019, Boughton said there was widespread political will and popular will for the project. Another train wouldn't be that bad. In Hartford, once Connecticut governors win re-election, a few top aides and appointed agency heads often choose the period between Election Day and the start of next term in January to ponder their resumes, calculate their futures, and move on to better paying jobs in the private sector. It's no different for Governor Ned Lamont as that 68-year-old Democrat gears up for the next 4 years. Within 4 days of election victory, Paul Mounds, the governor's chief of staff, who was a key advisor on both relationships with the General Assembly and the response to the COVID-19 pandemic, announced he was leaving. Nora Donahue, Lamont's lead legal counsel, was next. They will be replaced by Jonathan Datch as chief of staff and Natalie Braswell, the state comptroller for the past year, as general counsel. A couple days later, David Lehman, a former Wall Street executive who joined Lamont early in his first term and directed major changes in the way Connecticut government supports and attracts businesses, announced he was leaving. That cleared the way for his top deputy, Alexandria Adam, to become the next commissioner of the State Department of Economic and Community Development. Before November was out, Joseph Gioletti, whom Lamont lured out of retirement after running the Metro North Commuter Railroad to become commissioner of the State Department of Transportation 4 years ago, will soon leave to spend more time with his grandchildren. His deputy, Garrett Icalito, is Lamont's new nominee to head the agency. More recently nominated Andrea Barton Reeves, the CEO of the year-old Connecticut Paid Leave Authority, become the next commissioner of the State Department of Social Services. The current DSS commissioner, Dr. Deidre Guilford, will become executive director of the Connecticut Office of Health Strategies next year, signaling that healthcare will be a central focus as Lamont believes that rising consumer costs can be addressed through regional cooperation with neighboring states. At the height of the COVID pandemic, Guilford served double duties as the DSS commissioner and commissioner of the Department of Public Health. Down in Westport, the Register Citizen. I love this story. The use of gas-powered leaf blowers will now be restricted in towns thanks to new ordinance the representative town meeting adopted this week. The ordinance passed 22-9 and comes after 2 years of revisions and community input and nearly 5 hours of discussions at Tuesday's RTM meeting. The ordinance goes into effect May 15th. I'm so grateful to my RTM colleagues who voted to support this ordinance to limit the use of gas leaf blowers. Kristen Schneeman, a RTM District 9 member and lead petitioner for the ordinance, said in an interview Wednesday. And I'm so grateful to all the residents, students, landscapers, and others who turned out to be a part of what was a very civil and productive dialogue. It's been 2 years of a lot of listening and hard work to craft something that works for Westport. It feels good to be able to say Westport is a leader in Connecticut on the issues, and I hope we'll see other communities following suit, she added. The resolution says the purpose of the ordinance is to protect the health and safety of residents, to reduce nuisances, but during the meeting, Schneeman said this is about more than noise nuisance. She presented some of the reasons for the ordinance, including a town-wide goal to achieve net zero by 2050, Westporters' right to a peaceful and healthy enjoyment of their properties, and constituent-like sustainable Westport and Earth Place asking for it. Our constituents have been asking us for relief from these noisy and polluting machines for years, and we'll finally be able to offer them some, while still allowing landscapers and homeowners to keep up their properties appropriately, Schneeman said Wednesday. The proposal was first introduced at the end of 2021, creating a debate within the RTM in January 2022. The proposal sparked backlash from landscaping professionals and concerns from town employees on how they would do their jobs. While we've been actively pursuing this ordinance for 2 years, it's been 5 years since the issue we really highlighted in West Point, Schneeman said. People have been waiting a long time for action, and it feels good to have reached this point with some strong support. The details within the proposal have changed since the original iteration. Some of the changes covered this time when certain leaf blowers can be used, removing a provision limiting the number of leaf blowers that can be used on a property, and exempting the town and golf courses from the ordinance. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back with CT Politics TV.
Want to have your show on CT Politics? If you produce a show on CT political issues or commentary and want to play it to the world, contact us now at ctpolitics.tv. We'd love to have you part of the team.
Welcome back to CT Politics TV. I'm Jimmy J. Moving on, an effort to preserve a tiny island off the tip of Long Island got a major boost in recently passed federal omnibus spending bill. Language in a tiny portion of that $1.7 trillion spending package directs multiple federal agencies to brief Congress on potential costs for conserving and managing Plum Island. It's to bring all the parties together to discuss in the open what's required to move the island towards preservation, says Louise Harrison with the advocacy group Save the Sound. The 840-acre Plum Island is located approximately 1.5 miles off Orient Point. It's currently owned by the federal government. For decades, it hosted a high-security government research lab. That lab will close and its operation move to Kansas in the coming year. But the island's isolation from major development has made it an ecological goldmine, providing key habitat for birds, seals, fish, and coral. The island is home to many historical buildings, including the National Register of Historic Places, Plum Island Lighthouse, 40 and Fort Terry Army Barracks, and Weapons Battery. The island also is highly valued by the Montauk Indian Nation as a part of its cultural heritage. This is a very important move towards the preservation and conservation of Plum Island, as well as the protection of the Montauk people's cultural heritage, says Sandra Brewster Walker, Executive Director of the Government Affairs Office for the Montauk Indian Nation, in a statement. Harrison said conservationists have worked for more than a decade to block major development on the island. She hopes the request by Congress will accelerate island preservation efforts. I think it sort of wraps it all together in a nice package, puts a bow on it, and says, okay, we're talking about this now, and we're serious, Harrison says. Harrison hopes the bill will put together key information from the multiple federal agencies, information she hopes can be used to achieve conservationist major goal for the island, making it a national monument, protecting the area from future development or sale. Members of Connecticut's congressional delegation are expressing frustration with the U.S. House of Representatives remaining at a standstill Wednesday night after Republicans failed to elect a speaker for the second day in a row. But they are also reveling in the silver lining of the day's long saga. Democrats are starting the new session of Congress on a united front, even as they lose control of the House to a narrow GOP majority. Without the election of a speaker, the House is essentially inoperable. No members can be sworn in to the 118th Congress, no committees can be formed, and no rules governing the chamber can be adopted. On the other side of the U.S. Capitol, the Senate is operated normally as new members were sworn in on Tuesday, and Senator Chuck Schumer of New York began his second term as majority leader. The state of Congress stands in juxtaposition to the opening day of the Connecticut Congressional Assembly, which began without any drama in electing leadership, as well as the inauguration of Governor Ned Lamont for his second term. There is only one house in Congress that is meeting, and that's the Senate. We are not constituted yet. That creates a problem. U.S. Rep. John Larson of District 1 of the 1st District said in a Wednesday evening interview, "We're all in limbo here, as the saying goes." While Representative Kevin McCarthy has secured the support of most House Republicans, he has repeatedly fallen short since he needs the votes of the majority of Congress. 20 GOP members and one voting present blocked McCarthy's bid for Speaker on the 6th vote. In every vote cast Tuesday and Wednesday, all 5 members of Connecticut's delegation has supported Representative Hakeem Jeffries, Democrat of New York, for Speaker. He will become the first Black member to lead a party when he likely becomes House Minority Leader. Some Democrats have openly relished the drama that has unfolded, with Republicans unable to unify and get behind a Speaker. But others are frustrated about the lack of progress and that the House cannot function until then. This thing started to become almost embarrassing, given the fact that it was clear that the 20 or so members were not budging with these consecutive votes. U.S. Rep. Joe Courtney of the 2nd District said in a Wednesday interview, and whatever sort of strategy that Kevin McCarthy had on 1st roll call and 6th roll call, it clearly hasn't worked at all. The House initially adjourned for a few hours until 8 p.m. Wednesday as McCarthy and his supporters met with his critics and tried to find a path forward. While they said progress was made, McCarthy wanted to hold off on a 7th Speaker vote until Thursday to allow talks to continue. Now a quick check on the weather. Low clouds with a shower towards dawn tonight with a low of 37. Tomorrow, cloudy rain and snow showers in the morning, followed by a little rain. Wait a minute, did I say snow? It did. Cloudy, rain and snow showers in the morning, followed by a little rain in the afternoon with a high of 47. So the warm weather is going away. We're going to get some snow, some rain, and no Speaker. I'm actually going to take a moment to talk about that before I go to break. The headline portion of this is done. I am a conservative. I'm a registered Republican. And I have to say, this is getting to be just embarrassing to me and just personally for the Republican Party. I believe now that even if Kevin McCarthy does win, he is going to be held hostage to the Freedom Caucus. I believe that's who these 20 representatives holding out are. I think that those 20 should have voted for him on the first go around. If that's what the party wanted to unite around, the majority of the party seems to. So it's just not a good look for the Republican Party. It's not a good look for America, just not being united on the world stage. It's a little disappointing as a Republican to watch right now. We're going to take a quick break and we're going to come back and talk a little bit more, but we're going to bring on a guest tonight. He is the chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party, Ben Proto. Stick around.
CT Politics TV and the Connecticut Taxpayers Union present Unaffordable America with Daniel Kent Newmeyer, Joe Patrina's band Little House, focusing on Connecticut.
Now get yourself ready, go cat go. Ooh yeah.
Entertaining and taking an educational look at nonpartisan issues of affordable living in America.
Born in a land where we wave 'em high.
All points of view are welcome.
And we got blue angels climbing in the sky. I'm the luckiest guy in America. I'm the luckiest man born in America.
Join the Connecticut Taxpayers Union right now at ctpolitics.tv.
Born in America.
Welcome back to CT Politics TV. I am joined now by Mr. Dan Newmeyer. How you doing, Dan?
I'm doing great, Jimmy. You're doing
We're
a great
gonna,
job.
yeah, thank you very much. We're waiting for Mr. Ben Proto to join us here in a little bit, but I wanted to see and talk to you about Representative Williams.
The gentleman who passed.
Yeah, I wanted to bring you on and talk to you about him because I know that you were deeply involved in politics well before I was.
Yeah,
And you might have.
I didn't get the pleasure to meet him, and I think anytime that we lose a leader, it's not a partisan thing. It's just very unfortunate because there's so few people who stand up for us and fight hard for their constituents, and he was beloved by the whole legislature. So it's a very sad day, and I think the governor did the appropriate thing by, putting the flags at half staff and not holding court today at the legislature and getting everybody started, because it's just a big punch in the gut while we're, things have been tough election cycle and everything else. What I do want to say is that you're doing a great job here, and I'm very happy that you are bringing on Chairman Proto. Obviously, he and I have been at odds on things, and the chairmanship is a tough job when people like me are working on them. But everybody's welcome here, and I'm hopeful that that you guys have a good conversation and that goes well. We also had a 6 o'clock interview with News 12's John Craven, and that's going to be for tomorrow evening. We also have a bunch of good guests coming up. We have the president of the CCDL, Holly Sullivan. She's going to do an interview with me tomorrow. Monday, we have the Secretary of the State. I'm sorry, not Secretary, the Lieutenant Governor, Susan Weissowitz, who's an old friend of mine from my previous days as a Democrat operative and union operative and Connecticut State Employees Association organizer. So it's always good to talk to Susan, and she's with the majority and lets it known that, look, she thinks they're doing a good job and they win elections that way. Well, I think that we can do a better job as Republicans and put forward good candidates that people will like even more, because in my mind, we are a fiscally conservative state that's socially moderate. So look forward to that on Monday. And then you landed a big one for Tuesday.
Yeah. Dominic Rapini, right? So it'll be great to have Dominic on. Now, Dominic is another person who I did not see eye to eye with, but he's a good friend from the past, and this is politics. So when it's campaign season, we take the gloves off and hopefully go back to work afterwards, come together and try to get another go around at it. But it can be kind of controversial with things and everything. So I'm very happy that Dominic Rapini is coming on too, and we were able to promote his appearance on the show as well. I'm going to, of course, let you handle Chairman Proto's interview, as you got the guest, and I'm sure he would be more comfortable watching you, but I think that's going to be a big deal. Also of note is yesterday I was at the Capitol, and there's a lot of streaming video out there for people to watch. They can find that on the Twitter page at CT Politics TV. And our own Joe Aguirre, who had to have a finishing procedure on some medical stuff with his heart. It all went well.
He's recuperating and chomping at the bit. He's a little jealous that you and I are doing this. So,
Well, he just missed seeing his face on TV.
is that what it is? Yeah, it could be. Could be.
But
He's got a good-looking mug, right?
Yeah, I read a story, or I read a headline earlier, and the story that I read excluded the driver's name that was involved in the accident with Representative Williams, and I actually have it now. So I'm going to report that who the other driver was and who was killed. It was pronounced dead at the scene as well. His name is 27-year-old Kamid Mustafaj of Manchester. It's KIMEDEMUSTAFAG. So that's
it's horrific.
Such a horrible tragedy.
Well, and then it comes on the heels of he had just spent a nice evening at the ball and with the governor's ball and everything, and then his family has to get that call. And I always think of it in terms of he was 38 years old. Well, I'm 58 years old, and the last 20 years of my life, a lot of family, a lot of stuff happens, when you're an adult, and to miss out on that. And I don't know, did he have children too?
It just said he was survived by his wife.
I see. Well, regardless, it's always a tough time. I don't know if Chairman Proto is going to come on. Maybe I scared him off.
I
doubt it.
Why would he be scared of you, Dan?
Oh, I don't know. I'm not a very scary guy. You know what I mean? So anyways, no, I'm looking forward to this. And I think, to reiterate for people, we have put the show together in hopes of bringing folks together from all the political backgrounds so we can start to have a dialogue again. We've kind of, pushed out from talking to each other and gone into our little bubbles. And, sometimes you come into a conversation and you can't even believe that people are saying the things that they are. They're treating each other as poorly as they are. And that to me was a big problem. But it looks like our guest is here. I will bow out gracefully, and I am very appreciative that Chairman Proto is taking the time to talk to you and be on CT Politics TV, because his opinion matters as well. And have a good show. All right.
Thanks, Mr. Newmeyer. I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you. And please, everyone, welcome the great Ben Proto, chairman of the party. Toughest job in politics.
Ain't that the truth?
Good evening, Mr. Proto. How are we doing tonight?
I'm good, Jimmy. Call me Ben.
Yes, sir. It's going to be a little hard for me. I was in the Marines for 20 years, so I'll do my best.
Yeah, but you don't have to say ma'am or sir anymore.
We're going to start with that already? You're going to get me spun up? You're going to get me all spun up tonight, and you're not even going to have a chance to talk. You know what? No, first off, sir, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to come on the show. I truly appreciate it.
Happy to be here.
The entire legislature, I know you were in close contact with everybody. It was mourning today over the loss of Representative Williams.
Yeah, just tragic, just absolutely tragic. A young man, my understanding is he has a young child, relatively recently married, is now, I think it was just entering his third term. His, Democrat, we, ran a race against him, but, represented his community and his constituents very well, was very passionate about the issues that he believed in. But at the end of the day, just a tragic situation. a great loss for his family, and my prayers and all of our prayers are with his family at this time, and hopefully, what's really sad about it, Jimmy, is that this is not the first accident of this type on our roads, and we're seeing it more and more. And this is not a Democrat or Republican issue. There's got to be a way to address this issue. And
Amen.
I think that our legislators and our state police and our DOT people need to sit down and put their heads together and figure out how to stop this from happening, that we're getting people getting on the highway going the wrong way, particularly at night. It's just got to stop. That and the pedestrian issues that we're having. There's got to be some solution to this problem. And so that we don't lose more young fathers and young men and women, or brothers and sisters and husbands and wives and grandmothers and grandfathers over stupidity. It's just stupidity. And this young man lost his life because someone was just stupid.
Yeah, Ben, you could, if you ever meet my wife, she'll tell you how passionate I am about bad driving.
We're good at it in Connecticut,
Oh my God.
But that's not bad driving. That's just stupid driving, and it costs a young man's life.
Absolutely.
So.
I don't want this interview to be all down, so I'm going to move on to a segment that I like to call "Get to Know Your Chairman" in this case. So, can you tell the viewers a little bit about your background, how you got into politics, and why you would run for chairman?
Well, I'm born and raised here in Connecticut in East Haven. Grew up in East Haven. Went to Notre Dame High School in West Haven. Went to college up in New Hampshire. Law school in New York City. And when I got out of law school, the economy was not in really great shape, and had recently gotten married, and was in need of a job. And the Republican leader in the House of Representatives at the time, who's now one of my very dear friends, a gentleman by the name of Bob Jekyll, was from Stratford. And so I went to Bob and said, hey, I really need a job, and I understand it might only be for a couple of months during the session. But anything you can do to help would really be helpful to me and my new wife. And so he hired me as a sessional attorney in November of 1987 to work the legislative session for 1988. I left the House in 1996 as chief counsel and senior staff member to the House Republican leader, and ran for state representative way back in 1988, 1990. And from there really kind of became more of a political operative than a political candidate, and have been involved with the Republican Party in Connecticut nationally. I had the honor of managing John McCain's campaign in 2000 and 2008 here in Connecticut, and just have done a number of gubernatorial and U.S. Senate races, congressional races, kind of just worked my way and just, and I'm a practicing attorney at the same time. And kind of in 2021, the chairmanship opened up, and I said, I think I can help, and I can do a good job as chairman. And I put my, my thoughts and ideas out there to the 74 members of the State Central Committee. And I was honored to be overwhelmingly elected in June of 2021 to be chairman. And that's kind of the nutshell Monarch Notes version of how I got here.
Perfect. Well, that's very informative to me. I'm not from Connecticut. I don't know if you knew that. So, and I talked to you. I actually talked to you on a semi-regular basis.
Exactly.
But now I know a lot more about you, and I truly appreciate it. I bet you our viewers do as well. All right, we got to get down to a little bit of business here. Yep. The election is over. We're licking our wounds have been licked. It's set in as a conservative. Yep. What lessons do you think that the Republican Party is going to take away from this election?
Yeah, I've talked a lot about this over the last couple of months since the election. And yes, we were not successful in the elections, but there were a lot of things that, we did well. There were a lot of things that went right for us. We were competitive for the first time since 2008 in a congressional race. But for literally that much, we have a Republican congressman today trying to figure out who the next Speaker of the House is going to be. That's a whole nother topic for another day. And we raised a lot of money. We spent a great deal of money. It was the first time that anyone could recall that we qualified all of our statewide candidates who were participating in the Citizens Election Program for the grant. We had 5 outstanding candidates for Congress. We had a great candidate for the U.S. Senate. We ran competitive races across the state. Again, the first time we've done that in probably a couple decades on the congressional and federal level. As you look across what happened, not only here in Connecticut, but across the country, I think you see a couple of things that, we need to kind of take notice of. There was only one incumbent governor in the United States who lost in 2022, Democrat or Republican. That was the governor of Nevada. There was no United States Senate incumbent who lost in 2022. First time in 100 years or so that no incumbent United States senator lost an election. And so what does that tell us? That tells, and when we look in Connecticut, we see what happens at the top of the ticket in Connecticut. And then we look down ballot. We had a number of state house and state Senate races that outperformed the top of the ticket.
Yeah.
We beat 3 incumbent Democratic House members. We lost 1 Republican House member. And so that tells me a couple of things about how voters are perceiving things. They're looking at a governor very differently than they look at their state legislature. And that I think they understand that their state legislator, their House member or their Senate member has probably far more impact on their life than the governor does. The governor is very much at a 30,000-foot view of the state and is managing a $25 billion entity on a day-to-day basis. The legislature are actually the ones who are discussing and adopting laws that impact us. Yes, governor signs them and the governor has to implement them. So I think, we saw people, I think, begin to understand the difference between the executive and the legislature. And our message at that local level really resonated. I think when we look at, we had 3 state Senate seats that we lost that outperformed the top of the ticket. We had a number of state house seats that outperformed the top of the ticket in their districts, which led us to believe that there was a lot of ticket splitting. So people were voting for Ned Lamont and a Republican for state rep or state senator. When we look at, for instance, Harry Aurora, who was our state treasurer candidate, he was the top vote getter on the Republican side of the aisle. Down ballot ticket splitting. And we're seeing more and more of that. So, all in all, obviously, we would have liked to have won the races, but we found a lot of things that we did well. We greatly improved our digital component this year. We had well over 8 million digital impressions this year from just the CTGOP. We had over 6 million digital engagements just from the CTGOP digital account. We raised substantially more money digitally than we have raised in the past couple of years combined. So we've really moved and begun to really invest in our digital platforms and our digital presence. We're going to expand upon that over this year and do more digitally. We know that the younger generation, particularly those folks really under the age of 40, get their news predominantly from digital sources. And if you're under the age of 30, you're living on TikTok for the most part, or Instagram, or, some of the other digital applications where you just have to live today, and you have to be there, and you have to be, providing content, and you have to be putting things out and talking to people. And you also have to understand realistically, when you look at those digital aspects, it's a very short time frame you have to get somebody's attention and to deliver a message. And it's literally probably less than 15 seconds. That
I always say that everybody under the age of 40 now, that's their attention span though. They don't know anything. After 45 seconds, they're gone. Right.
Well,
And
yeah, I've had this conversation with some folks, particularly college students and law school and graduate students. If you look at the data, if I don't get your attention within 7 seconds of you looking at something on your phone, you're going to move to the next thing. So I literally have 7 seconds to get your attention. And then by the time 25 seconds rolls around, I'm beginning to lose you, even if you're interested. Because we are living in such a very fast-paced environment in that regard. So it's learning how to create content, to deliver a message about the entire tax structure in the state of Connecticut in 15 seconds.
Good luck.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and we're learning how to do that. We're getting better at it. And we're finding more folks who are interested in engaging with us digitally. And we'll do more of it.
So, inquiring minds have been asking me a lot. Do I think Ben Proto is going to run for chairman again? So I got to ask, is Ben Proto going to run for chairman again?
Well, do the inquiring minds want Ben Proto to run for chairman again?
We can reserve that answer for another show if you'd like, so I can get you back on. No, it's actually, I'll tell you the truth. I'm not going to pull any punches with you. It's split. I hear, it's split.
And look, there's, it's always split. You're always, and here's the reality of, because for one thing, people don't truly understand what the state party does. They think that we run elections. They think that we run candidates, that we think we run television ads. And the reality is that people don't vote they're not voting for Ben Proto when, they're on the ballot. They're not voting for the Connecticut Republican Party. They're voting for candidates. They're voting for a Republican, or they're voting for a Bob Stefanowski or a Ned Lamontaly or a Levy or a Dick Blumenthal. That's who they're voting for. My job and our job as the party is to develop and create an infrastructure that the candidates can use. The best way to describe it is it's our job to build a road. It's their job to drive the car down the road. I can build them a beautiful road with great rest stops, on ramps, off ramps, some nice, scenery, nice, flat, even road. And if they drive the car into a tree, there's not a lot I can do about that. So look, the knock is, I'm not conservative enough. I'm not Trumpy enough. I'm too Trumpy. I'm too conservative. I talk to the Democrats too much. I don't talk to the Democrats enough. It is what it is, and at the end of the day, the election is in June. The new state central members are elected in May. So there's some time to talk about that. Right now, I'm just in the process of, continuing to do what we've been doing, moving things forward, continuing to build our infrastructure, continuing to build our programs, doing training for our upcoming municipal elections. Right now, we hold 120 towns in the state of Connecticut that are managed by a Republican mayor, Republican first selectman, or a Republican legislative body that is the decision-making entity in that town. Out of 169. That's pretty good. We won 19 towns last year in 2021 to really increase that. And a lot of that was we became very engaged with our local town committees and our local candidates. And we're going to do that again this year. At least if I'm chairman, if I decide to run and should I get reelected, we're going to do that again this year, and really work with our municipal candidates. Because at the end of the day, Jimmy, what I tell people is that if I put any Republican run town up against any democratically run town, I know which town is better managed. I know which town is better run. I know which town has better quality of life for the people who live in that town, and it's the Republicans.
How would I become a central member there?
A member of State Central. Well, to State Central, there are 74 members of State Central. 72 members are elected from the 36 state Senate districts. There's 2 members from each state Senate district. Then the chairman of or chairman or president, I forget what it is, of the Young Republicans and of the College Republicans are members of the State Central Committee. Each state Senate district or state central district will hold a convention on May 9th to elect the 2 representatives to state central. The convention is there are delegates that are selected from each town that go to that convention. Is like any other convention for state senate or what that we had for, when we had our state convention, things along those lines. And those delegates will select the state central members.
What's the turnover rate like for them guys?
For state central?
Yeah.
There's usually about a 20 or so % turnover every 2 years. This year, we've got a couple of state central members because of redistricting no longer live in the district that they represent. So they would have to run in a different district. I think there's 2 or 3 that, because of the changes in the state Senate districts through redistricting, got moved into other districts. That happens every 10 years. And then, there's folks who have been there for a while who want to move on to do the next thing in their life. There are people who lose. They run and they lose because it is an election. So the turnover is usually about 20 or so %.
All right. So I got a couple more questions real quick here. I always hear the word chairman, right? And I think, well, Frank Sinatra, first off. I'm dating myself, right? But
Whitey Ford. I can date chairman of the board, Whitey Ford. I'm dating myself.
How hard is that? Is that of a job, being a chairman of the GOP, especially here in the state of Connecticut?
It has its challenges, and I will tell you, Nancy DiNardo, who's the chairwoman of the Connecticut Democratic Party, Nancy and I get together often and talk about different things, and she will tell you the same thing. Even having all the elected officials, I describe being chairman as herding cats underwater while attempting to wrap your arms around a squid. Because again, when you talk, did you get all that?
I was trying to picture that. Yeah.
And just kind of going back to your, there's a split on whether I should run again or whether I should return as chairman. And you have a particularly on our side, we have a very diverse group of people, and you have people who are, very conservative, very Trumpian, who may be pro-life. We have people who are pro-choice. We have people who are pro-2A. We have people who would support certain reasonable gun restrictions. We have, so we have a very diverse group of people within the Republican Party, which is both our strength and our weakness. The Democrats tend to be very homogeneous in their thought process and in their political and philosophical beliefs.
Just incorrect.
What's that?
Just incorrect.
Well, but they all agree on what we might think is incorrect. But if we look at the Republican Party in Connecticut, and I describe it kind of this way: if you take a Republican up in the northeast corner of Connecticut, and if you've not ever, and I know you get around the state. And to anybody who's listening, if you've never been to the northeast part of the state, you need to go there. It is absolutely beautiful. It is just a treasure part of our state. But folks who live up in the northeast corner tend to be very conservative. They tend to be multi-generational there. So you're looking at 5, 6, 7 generations of people who have lived here. Many who came to Connecticut, their families came to Connecticut when Connecticut was founded. And they became farmers, and they became, ministers. And then the mills came in, and they became factory workers. And they've been here for many, many generations. And they're very conservative. They're very, for instance, a pro-2A group. And they tend to look at things, with a much more conservative bent. Then you have southwestern Connecticut, where we have Darien and Westport and New Canaan and Greenwich and Wilton and those types of towns, where you have Republicans who would at one time we would have called Rockefeller Republicans, who would have been more moderate in their belief structure and in what they look at. They tend to be much more New York oriented, New York City oriented. Before COVID would have been people who got on the train and went to work in New York City on a regular basis. But they're both Republicans. And I tell everybody, you have, folks who are very conservative and folks who are very moderate, and they both get a vote at the state convention for candidates. And again, that's a strength of our party, is that we have diverse opinions. The weakness of that is we tend to fight among ourselves over those opinions, as opposed to finding that which we agree on. And I always go back to the Ronald Reagan quote: "The guy who agrees with me 80% of the time is not my 20% enemy." And we sometimes lose sight of the fact that we agree on a lot more than 80%, but we want to go fight with each other over that 5 or 7% that we don't agree on. And that, I think, is where we sometimes run into trouble when it comes to candidates and winning elections.
You mean a united front, like, electing a Speaker of the House, even?
Yeah, exactly. And I one of the things I talk about a lot, Jimmy, is understanding the difference between principles and values and issues. Issues are not principles and values. Issues are issues. Issues are transient. They come and go. Some last a little bit longer than others, but issues come and go. Principles and values are bedrock. They're foundation. They're what you build upon. And if you attempt to make an issue a principle, you will lose, because issues are not principles. Well, issues flow out of our principles. Our position on issues may flow out of our principles, but principles are bedrock. That's what we build on. And so when we confuse an issue as a principle and we go to war with each other, even though we agree on the principles, but we disagree on the issue, then we're losing sight of why we're Republicans.
Couldn't agree more. I love talking to you so much. This is awesome. I'm almost out of time, so here's my last question. Are you gonna run for, if you don't run for chairman, are you gonna run for office again? And which one?
Well, I think if I were to run for office again, I would probably first have to go to divorce court. I'm not sure my wife would put up with that. She has been, very understanding about my being chairman. I'm out a lot more than I'm home in the evening, particularly during the cycles. And she's been very supportive of that. I think running for office might be a little bit different. And the other thing that I tell people all the time, Jimmy, is I've been doing this a very long time. As I said, 1987 was when I got my first job. I worked on my very first campaign in 1976. I worked on Gerald Ford's election campaign in 1976. It was the very first campaign I ever worked on. And that was because it was a assignment from my senior government class at Notre Dame. You were required as part of your senior government class to work on a political campaign. It didn't matter whose campaign, Democrat, Republican, you worked for the Communist Party. The instructor, the teacher didn't care. He's a former state representative by a man by the name of Dick Antonetti. I'll remember Dick to the day I die. And I chose to work on, Gerald Ford's election campaign in 1976 in East Haven. I knocked doors. I made phone calls. I licked stamps back when we licked stamps and envelopes in those days. I thought this was just going to be the dumbest thing in the world that I was ever going to do, but I had to do it because it was an assignment from school. So I had to get a grade on it. Well, I really kind of liked it. And then I went to college in New Hampshire, and I was in college in New Hampshire in 1980. Which was a presidential election year when Jimmy Carter was running for re-election in 1976. From 1976 to 1980, he's running for re-election. And at the time, the school that I went to, which was then known as New Hampshire College, is now known as Southern New Hampshire University, the one you see all the TV ads for, was the school that all of the presidential candidates came to. And they now come to St. Anselm's. If you watch every 4 years, St. Anselm's is the big school they go to because they have a whole political program there. But when I was in school, they came to my school, and I met every Republican presidential candidate in 1980. And in 1980, I worked for Howard Baker, name from the past, a man who I had tremendous respect for, was a Senate Majority Leader, ultimately became Chief of Staff, to Ronald Reagan. But I worked for Howard Baker in the New Hampshire primary. I knocked doors in New Hampshire and made phone calls in New Hampshire. And if you've never done that, you should go do it. It's an experience unto itself. And that's how I really kind of got that bug. And then when I graduated law school and came home and needed that job, ended up in the legislature working there. But at the end of the day, that tells you how far back I go. So the point of all of this is I am the oldest state chairman in my lifetime.
Come on. You don't look a day over 45, I'll say.
Yeah, we'll go with that. But I am the oldest state chairman in my lifetime. And as I told people, I'm not looking for something on the other side of this. I've spent a lot of time. I've spent over 35 years here in Connecticut since 1987 doing this. And I can go all the way back to 1976 when I first started. So I'm not looking for another job. I'm not looking for another position. I'm looking for my Social Security check in a couple of years and Medicare in a couple of years.
Well, God bless you with that.
If it's around, right?
Yeah.
So, am I going to run for chairman again? In all probability, I am. I haven't made a final decision yet. It's between now and June. A lot of things can happen. I had COVID and the flu just before Christmas, and it really knocked me on my butt. And a lot of things can happen over the next number of months. But at the moment, I'm leaning towards running. I really enjoy the job. I enjoy going out and meeting people and talking to people and talking with folks like you and carrying the banner.
Well, Ben, I really enjoy talking to you when you call into the other show. Now this one. But and truly, I truly appreciate you stopping by and chatting with me for, this is a half an hour long. So, that was a long
went by fast.
Yeah, it was fun. I hope you had a great time.
Absolutely.
I hope you'll join us again.
Anytime. Let me know when you want to do it again.
And I will too. Thank you very much. All right, Ben, have a great night.
You too, Jimmy. You take care.
Thanks, sir. You too. All right, guys, that was Ben Proto. Thank you so much for joining us. Get all your latest headlines concerning CT by visiting ctpolitics.tv/headlines-news and follow us at CT Politics TV on all social media platforms. This does it for us. We'll be back tomorrow night at 5 for CT Politics TV. Thank you to Ben Proto, the chairman of the Connecticut Republican Party, for joining us. And thank you so much for tuning in to CT Politics TV. I am Jimmy J saying good night and God bless.